So welcome to everyone to this second online meeting on the 2020 review process of the UN treaty bodies. I think we will wait for maybe another 2 minutes to make sure we can have everyone online, but I see already 43 participants and I'm very pleased to see the great turnaround. So thank you for all for being here, and we can start in maybe 1 minute now. Okay, dear colleagues, I think we can start. I would like to welcome you on this this webinar. It's the second webinar we're organizing. The first one took place yesterday, and again, this webinar is organized by TBNet and in cooperation with Open Society Justice Initiative, the International Service for Human Rights, and Amnesty International. And TBNet is a group of NGOs. I'm sure most of you are aware of a group of NGOs working to support the engagement of civil society with the UN treaty bodies. It is composed of several NGOs, the Center for Civil and Political Rights, Child Rights Connect, the Global Initiative for Economic, Social and Justice, Social, Economic and Cultural Rights, IDA, International Disability Alliance, IMADRE, Arrow Asia Pacific, and OMCT. So I would like to again welcome you on this this webinar. It's great to see that so many participants are on board. We have now 48 participants, and yesterday we had around 35, 40 participants as well, which shows that there is really a need to discuss and engage on the UN treaty bodies review process and discuss with all of you the role of the NGOs and the civil society on this process. I would like also to thank the panelists who will be with us today. Daisuke Komatsu from IMADRE that will speak for the first panel, and then our colleagues from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Switzerland, Samira Cizero. She is not there now because she's attending a UPR session, but she will join us at 11, so in 25 minutes, and she will introduce briefly the reports that was prepared by Switzerland and Morocco. Thank you also to Ilaria Paolazzi from Child Rights Connect. She will also discuss the next steps on how we could move forward based on the report. And finally, my colleague Anna-Karin Olmund from Amnesty International that will also give us some overview on the budgeting issues together with the COVID situation that I will also cover. The objective of this meeting, we are a big group, but the objective of this meeting is really to be able to engage and to discuss with you this the outcome of the report. So I know it's not so easy to have to be able to discuss within such large group, especially because we are online. But it would be great really to have also your feedback to see your reactions on these different issues that we will discuss today. So feel free to use the chat that you can see on your system, on your Zoom system. or to raise your hand if you want to intervene, to ask questions. So after each of the panel, we will have really a time for discussions, for questions. And again, I think the objective is not only to share information about what is going on in Geneva, and I think that's extremely important in the context of this COVID situation where traveling is so difficult, so the access to the UN is so difficult. But it's also to hear from you on what you expect from us, from those based in Geneva, and how we can improve these connections between NGOs from the regions and the colleagues here in Geneva. So I thank you very much for all of you to attend this meeting. Maybe few words of introduction. You probably all know that this review process is a very long process. Those who are following this since the beginning could basically go back to as long as 2003, where the first discussions took place in Liechtenstein for the ways to improve and strengthen the UN treaty bodies. This long process led to several attempts to improve the work of the treaty bodies, in particular the reporting procedure, the procedure that requires from the states to submit report on regular basis, and for the committees to review how the human rights treaties are actually implemented. So these proceedings took place for a long time with several attempts, and it's true that so far the discussions were not so successful. In 2014, you also probably are aware that there was a resolution adopted by the General Assembly, the resolution 68/268, that actually set some standards to improve the work of the treaty bodies and require the states to fund appropriately the work of the treaty bodies. This resolution in 2014 actually requested that 6 years later there should be an assessment or an evaluation on how the treaty bodies functions and what could be improved and how far the resolution was actually implemented. And we are now exactly after those 6 years. It's why the president of the General Assembly appointed two co-facilitators, Morocco and Switzerland, to prepare a report on possible way to improve the work of the treaty bodies. In the meantime, the various stakeholders, including NGOs, were heavily involved in the process, brainstorming on how we could improve the situation, how we could develop new ways and standards to reinforce the work of the treaty bodies, and also to reinforce the participation and the engagement of the civil society. So we had in July 2019 a first meeting in Geneva with more than 30 NGOs attending from the regions, from Geneva, to see what we would need as CSOs, as NGOs, as civil society, what we would need to make the treaty bodies more efficient in terms of the reporting procedure mainly, but we also discussed the individual communications mandate of the treaty bodies. So that came up with a paper. You have the link in the concept note in the agenda. We came up with a position paper that was endorsed by more than 130 NGOs, and this was actually one of the key development developed by TBNet and other partners. In the meantime, the co-facilitators were appointed in April 2020. And now we are in the situation, or we are in the time where we got this report, and we would like to share with you first the process of the report, but also the outcome of the report. So to go through all the different recommendations and see what are those recommendations, how they are valid and useful for the CSOs, and what could be, as a group of NGOs, as a community of NGOs that actually are involved in using the treaty bodies, what could be done for the next steps, and what could be our role for the future. So that's the objective of this meeting. It was a kind of brief recap of the context. So it's quite technical the report, but also the context of the strengthening of the UN treaty bodies. So I hope it will be not too complicated to follow. We will try to make it as simple as possible to make sure that all the colleagues, even those who are not so familiar with, can really follow easily. If you see, or if you have some questions regarding what we will discuss now, feel free again to ask clarification in the chat. If we use acronym, or if we use expressions, or if we do something that are not clear, really don't hesitate to mention that on the chat, or just take the floor to say you don't understand this point or this point. I think that's the main part of the introduction I wanted to share with you. So the program now that we will go through is we will have first the review on the context of these co-facilitators reports, and that will be done by Taisuke Komatsu from TVNet. Thank you, Tai, to be here. I can already see you on the camera. And then around 11, Samira will join us to discuss the report itself. In the meantime, I will also share one document which is a kind of overview of the report. It will be probably easier to follow. And I will post it on the chat. So unless anyone has questions at this stage or would like to say something, and again, feel free and really don't hesitate to speak. If that's not the case, maybe I will give the floor to Taisuke. And again, thank you very much, Taisuke, for doing this panel.
Thank you, Patrick, and I hope everyone can hear me. Okay, great. So good morning and good afternoon and good evening to all of you. And my name is Taisuke Komatsu from the International Movement Against All Forms of Discrimination and Racism. It's called IMADA in acronym, and we are a member of the TVNet, and the organization follows the Committee on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination closely. And today I'm tasked to explain the process that happened this year for the treaty body strengthening process. And I try to make it as least, I don't know how to say that, but as much as less technical. But hopefully you can follow these technicalities, but if you have questions, please feel free to ask it in the chat box, and I will try to answer. Okay. And I see that the summary report of the review process has been posted in the chat box, so you can also refer to that. So, okay, so let me begin by give the background of the 2020 review process. So as Patrick briefly mentioned, this so-called treaty body strengthening process has been going on for a long time, which has a long history, and it can go back to actually as far as 1980s, when the Philip Alston, who was the former special rapporteur on extreme poverty, was asked by the General Assembly to do independent assessment of the state of treaty bodies. So the discussion has already started a long time ago, but this current process was outcome of the previous process, which started, which ended before around 2012, and the General Assembly adopted a resolution called Resolution 68268. So you keep hearing this number today, and this was outcome of the discussions and the many reports and the negotiations, which was highly political intergovernmental process. And what was in the resolution 68268 was a set of recommendations and suggestions for strengthening of treaty bodies. So that includes offering all states for the simplified reporting procedure. And I am sure that you have already experienced that with different treaty bodies, that the committee provides a list of issues prior to reporting, and then the state party makes a written replies to it instead of periodic reports. So this is one of it, and then they also ask for treaty bodies to provide shorter and more focused concluding observations. And then they also made word limits on different documents in the system. And they also ask for further alignment of working methods for the constructive dialogues with states. And then it also addressed the issue of elections, and they asked the OSCHR to prepare information note about the current composition and the representation of different genders, geographies, professions, and legal systems. And it encouraged more diversity of the membership. It also reinforced the independence of the treaty bodies and their members, and it encouraged the implementation of the Addis Ababa guidelines on independence and the impartiality of members. And it also established a dedicated capacity building and technical assistance within OSCHR to states to help them help them fulfilling reporting obligations. And as Patrick mentioned, they also established a formula for the allocation of meeting time and resources for treaty bodies to carry out their work. And in the resolution, it concluded by saying that the General Assembly would consider the state of human rights treaty body system no later than 6 years to review the effectiveness of measures to ensure their sustainability, and if appropriate, to decide to take further action to strengthening and enhance the treaty body system. So based on that, everyone understood that this means there would be a further review or consideration of the treaty body system in 6 years between 2014 and 2020. And we expected treaty bodies and OSCHR to take action to implement the recommendations that I mentioned now. But it was not clear what the review would look like. And I would say not much have happened in the first years, but there was some movement by treaty bodies and OSCHR to implement some of the recommendations. And I think it's not completely implemented. For example, the Committee on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination does not offer simplified reporting procedure for all members, all states, but only for delayed states which have not submitted reports for 5 years. But having said that, about 2019, that the stakeholders started asking what will happen in 2020 and what the review would look like. And there were many comments which said that they would like to avoid long and difficult negotiations like the last time. And the civil society wanted to ensure that our perspectives were included in the review, especially given how important civil society is as users and supporters of the system, and the number of civil society initiatives were carried out, and Patrick touched on it, and there were a group of civil societies got together last year in July to discuss the ideas and put forward joint proposals to strengthen the process, which focus on the calendars and the reviews. But at that time, there was no clarity as to what the review would look like, and then when it would occur, more importantly, perhaps. But finally, the General Assembly, or the President of the General Assembly, appointed Switzerland and Morocco as co-facilitators of the process in April this year. And he asked the co-facilitators to lead an intergovernmental process on the consideration of the state of human rights treaty body system in accordance with the resolution. And he also set out he also requested the co-facilitators to undertake informal consultations with member states in both in New York and Geneva, with contributions from OHHR, from the treaty bodies, and from the relevant stakeholders, including civil society. And then he requested them to submit the report of the consultations before the end of the last General Assembly session, containing recommendations for further actions to strengthen and enhance the treaty body system. And Switzerland and Morocco began their mandate by confirming the process. So they confirmed to seek written contributions. And then also does sort of capacity building for diplomats who are new to the issue. And they also consultation to all stakeholders, and then to submit a report in September. So written submissions were asked on 17 June from all stakeholders, so not only from member states, but from treaty bodies and civil society and others. And the deadline was 7 July. And there was strong engagement, so 90 submissions were made from all regions, and 55 were from states, including 2 joint submissions by the African group and the EU. And then 35 submissions were made from others. And that were, of that, 22 were from civil society, including 4 joint submissions. One of them was prepared by Actually TVNet, and another by ICHR, Amnesty International, and JBI, and then 9 from national human rights institutions, and 7 from current and former treaty body members. And in parallel to that, the co-facilitator started the consultations process. So I have a PowerPoint for you to have a grasp of the process, because it's quite a bit difficult to follow by just hearing what I'm saying. So let me share the slide. Yes, here. Let me, yeah, I think I can manage. Can you hear my slide? Great. So the first thing the co-facilitators did was to have a launch meeting. So they did it on 2nd June to share their visions, and they also the timeline, and then to also emphasize it was guided by inclusivity and transparency. And based on this commitment, they made sure that all public meetings were webcast. And the High Commissioner for Human Rights also participated in this launch. And then 2 days after, they did this technical expert level briefing for the member states and the stakeholders to understand what has happened before and then what is expected and so on. And it was attended by the chairs of treaty bodies, and especially the Shido chair, who was the chair of chairs, and the chair of the Committee Against Torture, and as well as a representative from the International Service for Human Rights to share the civil society perspective. And then after these meetings, they started, call for submissions were already made, and then they started actual consultations with member states and the others. So the first one took place in New York on 27th July, and that was fully online because of the pandemic. And then they discussed issues. So they also divided topics for each consultation to be discussed. So in the one in New York, focus on the membership, technical cooperation, capacity building, the budget, and the interaction with other different stakeholders, as well as individual communications. And then while they are doing it, they also had a meeting with the chairpersons, which was closed. So it was not a webcast, but they report that they discuss about further alignment of working methods, coordination, simplified reporting procedure, and so on. Those details are in the summary report, which was in the chat box, so you can see them more in detail if you wish. And then next month they held informal consultation in Geneva, and which was hybrid, so people could participate in the UN meeting room in person, and if they didn't want to, they could participate virtually. So for this one, they discussed the issues which were different from New York. So they discussed about the simplified reporting procedure, working methods, fixed calendar, periodicity, and so on. And then after that, they had a meeting with the High Commissioner and her team in the treaty body system, which was closed, but they reportedly discussed about the issues such as digitalization, budget, the calendars, and the working methods, and so on. And these are also in the summary report. And then finally, they had a consultation with stakeholders, so civil society and others in Geneva. And it was, because of it was done in a hybrid manner, it was possible for those who are outside Geneva to participate. And it was an open agenda, so civil society and others were free to raise the issues that have been addressed in different meetings so far. So different participants raised issues such as constructive dialogue, the membership, the budget, and the digitalization, so on. And the 48 participants attended, 8 in person and 40 online, with 23 interventions. And then after those consultations, the co-facilitators had a wrap-up meeting, which they shared their findings, and then the kind of the views for the incoming summary report, as well as the assessment. And then on 14th September, they finally submitted the report to the President of the General Assembly. So this is a quick grasp of the process itself. And then I would like to briefly explain and share the reflections on the process. So as I mentioned, the co-facilitators committed to inclusive and transparent process, as well as to include the views of civil society who participated in the discussions, and we think it was achieved very well. As I said, the consultations were webcast, and the information about the process was available to the public, and then there were different opportunity for civil society to share their views through written submissions or participating in these actual discussions. And also NGOs outside Geneva could participate virtually. But one thing we regret is that we could not participate in this consultation in New York, especially given the diplomatic audience in New York is different from the ones in Geneva, and I think it's fair to say the ones in Geneva have much more expertise about the treaty body system, but maybe not so much in New York. And then before wrapping up, I would like to share also for you to to better understand what was discussed during the consultations. So we think the co-facilitators' outcome report does a good job for consolidating the views expressed in the submissions and consultations, and they presented those in a balanced way. So there are some key takeaways from the report. So one of them is fixed predictable calendar, and the reporting cycle had a high level of support from different stakeholders, including member states. And some support from states and the civil society also supported the reviews in the region. And it's recommended in the outcome report as well. And there was some push to treaty bodies to review states in the absence of a report, but it was received a bit in a controversial way by some states. And then there were also continuing push for further alignment of the working methods. And a simplified reporting procedure is encouraged to be extended to all states. And then budget situation also receives a lot of attention, and given the backdrop of the budget shortfall at OHHR, and as well as the impacts from the COVID-19 pandemic. And I believe that many of you remember that there was a real threat last year to cancel all autumn sessions in 2019. So, and the adequate funding for the petitions work was highlighted, and the report called for establishment of the digital case management. And the increased use of technology kept coming up also because of the pandemic, and the treaty bodies have already started working online. And this was also reflected in the outcome report. So some states encourage more online work by treaty bodies, but some didn't want to. So there's still not a consensus, but it's been discussed, I would say, more enthusiastically than before. And then membership was also raised, and many called for greater gender and geographical diversity. And some states also recommended for term limits for members, because if I'm not wrong, apart from CRPD and the APT, there is no term limit provided by treaties, and some members just stay for forever. And there was some push by some states to adopt a code of conduct for treaty body members, but the majority didn't support it. So that was a positive outcome. And of course, some suggested more transparent election processes and also nominations. And then there were some hostile states saying that the treaty bodies are overstepping their mandates and not being objective. And some of them also say that the treaty bodies don't have a mandate to develop general comments or do follow-up. And so this remains as a concern. And some states also ask for interpretation of meetings and documents, translation of documents in all 6 UN languages. And this has a huge budget implications. And then a number of states also wanted to limit the civil society participation in the treaty body system. And some also suggested to censor civil society submissions, and actually namely by Russia, Cuba, and China, not surprisingly. But the other states supported the civil society space, and they also insisted on protecting civil society from reprisals. And the accessibility for civil society is not only civil society, but all stakeholders, including persons with disabilities, were I think, enjoyed the consensus. And then the webcast was also supported by many states. So that was another positive outcome. And then overall, I would say the states were more hostile to the treaty body system in New York than in Geneva. So it also proves that the importance of having consultations and discussions in Geneva, even though the process itself is led by in New York. And the civil society submissions played a very important role in contributing to the report and then the outcome of the report as a balanced document. And with this, I would like to finish my presentation and hope it helped you to have some ideas about the process and then also contribute to the discussions in this workshop. Thank you. And please feel free to ask questions if I was not clear.
Sorry, thank you very much, Tai Izuke, for the presentation. I really appreciate that you really went through all the different milestones and the process itself, which is, as you said, quite complicated, but I think we grasped with you the PowerPoint you share and the overview you then made on the various presentations of the stakeholders. So thank you so much. It's not always an easy exercise and you did it very well. So thanks. Is there any question from our colleagues on the process itself? I don't see anyone. Maybe at this stage I will switch into French to just clarify a few things on the interpretation. Pour les collègues qui suivent en...
For those of you who want to listen to the French interpretation, some of you have asked how to listen to the interpreter. Well, there's a button at the bottom right corner, and it says interpreting or interpretation, and you can choose English or French there.
It was translated, so there is no need, but if you, for those who will speak in French, you can also follow it in the translation to English on the interpretation button at the bottom of your screen on the Zoom screen. So going back to the presentation, I just double check if there is no raised hands, so no questions from your side. If you would like, you can still also use the chat. Feel free. Then I will maybe give the floor to Samira Cizero. She joined us for the presentation of the report. Samira is from the Swiss mission in Geneva. She was actually very much involved in the process of this COFAX report, and we are very pleased to have her for this webinar. As Tai Izuke said, I think the NGOs are pleased with the report. There are some very constructive recommendations that we really hope to bring forward for the implementation, either from the states or from the treaty bodies members themselves. I think it's a very constructive report, and if you compare with the attempt in the past, as I said before, this one is really promising. And we said yesterday, and I think it's most of the colleagues who follow the process will agree. There is a kind of momentum now with this report, and I think that one of the main issue, and we will discuss that later with Ilaria, is to keep this momentum and to see how we can move forward and make sure that the huge efforts done not only by the co-facilitators but by also all the stakeholders, because the level of submissions was really important. How we can make sure that those information, this report is not then lost in the UN bureaucracy, and how we can make sure that those recommendations will be actually translated into the reality. So before going to this kind of next steps, let's first discuss the report itself. what is in this report. As I said before, there is also kind of overview of the report that I shared on the chat. You can go through this while Samira will probably pick up on the main key element from this report. Samira, thank you again for being with us. And I know you are extremely busy because you just went from the UPR session, so you're jumping from one Zoom to another one. And I really appreciate that you were available for this meeting. The floor is yours. Thanks again for your time and your commitment.
Thank you so much, Patrick. And thank you also to TVNet for organizing this. Good morning, everybody. Bonjour tout le monde. As Patrick said, my name is Samira Chisero, and I'm part of the human rights team here at the Swiss Mission in Geneva. So I was part of the Geneva team with regards to the process. It's a pleasure to be here and discuss the treaty body strengthening process with you today. And a huge thank you for all of you that actually participated in the process in a way or another, either by contributing to written submissions or by participating in consultations. And also a huge thank you to all of you for collaborating with the treaty bodies as such, and thus contributing to a more robust human rights system. I would like to still give just a few comments on process, even though Taisuke really already summarized it perfectly, but just as an introduction maybe into the recommendations then as well. And then I'll say a few things about the recommendations, but then I'll also just mainly be here to react to questions if there's any, and to also have a discussion with you. As Taisuke said, Morocco and Switzerland were appointed as co-facilitators by the President of the General Assembly of the Treaty Body Strengthening process, and tasked with considering the state of the human rights treaty body system. The President of the General Assembly mandated formal consultations with member states in New York and in Geneva, and with OHCHR, the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, the treaty bodies themselves, and with all other relevant stakeholders, such as, of course, civil society and national human rights institutions. Maybe just a word on how we wanted to conduct the process. For us, our guiding principle somehow really was inclusivity and transparency for the process. So we tried to really be inclusive of everybody, especially also civil society, and to be transparent about the process by publicly publishing all the written contributions, and also by making all the informal consultations accessible through webcast. Maybe the only exception where we didn't webcast meetings were the meetings with the treaty bodies themselves and with OHCHR, because the format was a bit different. But there we also shared the recommendations or the main conclusions that came out of these meetings. So it was really important for us. As Taisuke said, we have received an impressive 90 contributions that we all published on the OHCHR webpage. And this was very important to us because it really showed the interest of different actors in the treaty body and in strengthening the system as such. On the one hand, the many contributions, but on the other hand, also the many the high level of participation in the informal consultations. So for us, that was really one of the positive elements of the process, that there was quite a massive engagement from different actors. We also had, prior to the consultation, an information session in New York about the work of the treaty bodies, to bring everybody up to speed on the work of the treaty bodies. And so we do believe that the process and also this session also contributed in a way to better understanding of the work of the treaty bodies and the importance of their work within member states. Of course, civil society, many actors already know the work of the treaty bodies very well. But so for us, that was an important side effect, I would say, of the process. Due to COVID-19, the whole process was led in a hybrid manner, meaning that we held virtual consultations in New York and a hybrid form of consultations in Geneva, with the possibility of in-person participation and online participation. So that was the things that I wanted to say on the process in a nutshell. We then tried to summarize the discussions that we had in a report, which of course is always tricky because there were so many views and so many interesting and trying also at the same time to really filter out, I would say, the main topic, the main issue that remained to the strengthening of the treaty. But I will give a quick overview of the recommendations that we made. PR Center has prepared a written summary of the recommendations, so maybe that can be useful to you as well. The first topic that we focused on is use of information and communication technology. As Tai said, of course, the COVID-19 pandemic, in a way, with regards to that topic, had access and communication technology. And so with regards to that, we were able to kind of use that momentum to really insist on the importance of using technological developments to increase the efficiency of the work of the treaty bodies, and also the transparency and the accessibility of that work. So that was one recommendations that we made to really use those technological developments for that, also in the future. At the same time, we did mention, and that was also brought up in the consultations by different actors, that online work will not replace in-person work. I think that's an important point. There's many things that can and should be done online, but there will still be a need for in-person work as well. We recommended that the digital shift be accelerated, also by considering hybrid. Also highlighted the fact that, of course, the budget question with regards to the digital shift has to be studied more in detail, and ask member states, the OHCHR and treaty bodies, to look at those budgetary questions a bit more in detail. There were like two under topics that we focused on with regards to the digital shift. That was individual communications on the one hand, and there was a strong support expressed during the consultations for standardization and centralization of communications management, and for the introduction of a case management system. So this was one of the recommendations that we made, that there should be invested into setting up such a case management system for individual communications, which we believe would really also have huge impact in terms of efficiency and transparency for the individual communications. The other aspect we focused on with regards to digitalization was the nomination and selection of treaty body members. And there we highlighted that the availability of information on all candidates to the treaty bodies would improve the current process of nomination and of selection, and that a transparent web-based electoral platform could help in that regard. And there, I think, while we do not have a web-based electoral platform yet, it's interesting to see that for the last elections that took place, it has now become more usual, I would say, to have candidates be available for interactive dialogues, digital interactive dialogues with member states, which allows member states to have a better impression of a candidate and of the qualification of a candidate on the one hand. And then on the other hand, with regard to the subcommittee for the prevention of torture, there has been the organization of a virtual interactive dialogue with all candidates that was organized by the association APT. So I think there's already a few interesting developments in that regard that have been observed lately. Of course, again, as I said, there hasn't been a development of a transparent web-based electoral platform for all treaty body elections, but I think the trend is going into an interesting direction. The second topic we talked about was the alignment of working methods and of rules of procedure. And there, in general, the recommendation was clearly to further streamline the working methods of treaty bodies and to align the working methods as well. One point that was highlighted by many actors that participated in the process was the importance of introducing a simplified reporting procedure. And this would be meant to improve the efficiency of the system and allow states also to comply with their reporting obligations maybe a bit more easily. One specific recommendation that was also made in that regard is to have limited numbers of questions in the list of initial prior to reporting. Sorry. And then we also made recommendations with regards to alignment of methodology for the constructive dialogue with state parties. And basically recommended that there should be alignment of the methodology for these dialogues, so that that it's easier to prepare for them and also easier to use synergies with regards to them. And the third topic we discussed under this topic was the alignment of methodology for concluding observation and follow-up recommendations. And there the focus was on having really concluding observation and follow-up recommendations that are implementable, that are focused, short, concrete, and that balance immediate with longer term priorities. But I think the important point was really the fact that they should be implementable. And we also insisted on the fact that there should be aligned modalities for interaction with stakeholders, because that would facilitate the interaction with treaties for different stakeholders, such as society, and that we believe that it's not always easy to be able to know how to interact with which treaty body. The third topic we talked about was the fixed calendar and periodicity of the human rights treaty body sessions. And there as well, many states, but also other actors that participated in the consultation expressed support for the establishment of a fixed calendar. And we recommended in the report that the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights could prepare in coordination with the treaty bodies a schedule for fixed calendar, propose a schedule, and estimate also costing for predictable review cycles. So hopefully that will also allow us to accelerate the implementation of the establishment of a predictable review cycle and of fixed calendars. The fourth topic was accessibility by different stakeholders. On the one hand, civil society, national human rights institutions, academic platforms. And there, the co-facilitators recommended that OHCHR should undertake measures to enhance the visibility and accessibility of the treaty body system, so facilitate digital interaction with stakeholders. We also had a recommendation specific for persons with disabilities and their interaction with the treaty bodies, and specifically on taking into consideration their special needs with regards to any digital shift. The third sub-point in that was the reviews in the regions and the fact that it should be promoted to have treaty body reviews in the region, because that would allow for increased participation of regional stakeholders and national stakeholders, would also enhance the visibility of the treaty body system, and also have some positive impact on follow-up and implementation, because these national and regional actors would be more engaged in the review. The fifth point that we talked about was the capacity building and technical assistance program, and there insisted on the importance of continuing it and on the role of the OHCHR in terms of it being, that program being effective. The last and of course big topic were the budgetary issues. It's always a bit tricky, especially since we were leading this process in times of COVID, where of course budget and money allocation unfortunately is quite tight, and the massive budgetary issues. We did recommend, however, that the budgetary allocation should not be a victim to fluctuation, and should be fixed, and availability of resources should really be made available based on the needs of the treaty bodies, so that they can carry out their functions and mandate, and that the current funding formula should be revisited. But as I said, unfortunately, I think the current climate is not very does not help that issue, of course. But these were the main recommendations that we made. With regards to follow-up, maybe I can just also say a few words on that. So I think one of the important points that we made with regards to follow-up is that there is a need for follow-up. The process clearly showed that. The process also clearly showed that there's immense support for the previous resolution on the strengthening of treaty body system, resolution 68/268, and that many relevant points have been treated in that resolution, and that this resolution should remain kind of the overall framework of the treaty body strengthening process. However, there is need to enrich this resolution with a few additional points, and those are the points that we try to focus on during the process, and the points that I mentioned now. But yeah, so we do believe that the previous resolution should remain the overall framework, but that we need to make a few steps forward, a few more steps forward in that way. It is now up to the President of the General Assembly to decide how this follow-up process should look like, and in that sense, we don't know, we don't have any more information than you, and we're waiting also for to hear from him and to see how the process will go forward. I think I'll stop there, and don't know if there are any questions from you.
Thank you very much, Samira, for your presentation. And I know it's not an easy task. I tried to do the same yesterday, and there are so many information and so many recommendations that it's really difficult to grasp everything. But you did it also very well, and actually it's also a proof that the report is actually really a very good basis to move forward, because you again touch upon so many issues, and also so many ways actually to improve the situation. So thank you again for not only your presentation, but your commitment for all this process. And I know you worked hard on the drafting process and all the various consultations. So I really appreciate that you manage your time to be with us this morning.
Thank you.
It would be great to see, to hear from the participants if there are some questions, or if you'd like to. Yes, I see one. I see. No, maybe I'm wrong, guys. Do you like to speak? I can't see your name, but if there is someone to speak, just we can just start and yeah, Alexandre, you can put your mic.
Okay, thank you for giving me the floor. My name is Alexandre Blotz. I'm the Human Rights Officer for the World Federation of the Deaf. I want to really thank the speakers for their presentations on this very important report. We've been involved in the consultation procedure with ECOSOC, and we've worked for a long time with the UN. Our top priority is to provide accessibility to all UN treaty bodies' work. So far, we have been working with the CRPD committee, and they have provided great accessibility in terms of subtitles and sign language interpreters. So we'd like to have the same accessibility provided to other UN treaty bodies. For example, the Committee on the Rights of Children, in the CEDAW, Convention Against Discrimination of Women, because there are many overlapping issues. For example, if we're talking about deaf women, deaf children, then we wonder how we can get access to the meetings of those treaty bodies. So I think it would be important to expand accessibility beyond just the CRPD committee. It's a good start. The CRPD committee provides a good example. This good example should be followed by other UN treaty bodies as well. And we do consider accessibility in sign language a basic human right for deaf people, as the CRPD says, and we want to have that human right respected by all UN treaty bodies work. That's our main priority, and I would like to share with you. Concluding, thank you so much for this very interesting report, and I hope we'll continue to work together on improvement of the UN treaty body system. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alexandre, for your comment and your encouragement. Samira, maybe you would like to react on this question, and then I have Godwin and also a question from Kevin. Maybe I can also raise the question from Kevin because it's from the chat. He's asking if you know when the president of the General Assembly will give feedback on the follow-up process. So maybe reaction on Alexandre and the response, if you have, I'm not sure actually, to Kevin, and then the floor is to Godwin. Thank you, Samira.
Thank you very much. And to Alexandre, yes, we agree that accessibility is really key and should be granted beyond the CRPD, and that was one of the points that we did make in the report. In terms of how you can reach, you mentioned specifically the Committee on the Rights of the Child and CEDAW. I think I would, in general, encourage you to reach out to the secretariat of these two treaty bodies, and try to make yourself heard with the secretariat. That would be my personal advice. But I think that there is awareness around the issue of accessibility and that it needs to be granted. But of course, it's always to raise it again. To the question on timing and when the President of the General Assembly will decide on the follow-up, unfortunately, I can't give you any time indication, personally, I do hope that it will be before the end of the year, so that we know how the process will go forward next year. But I really don't know. It's really just an estimation. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Samira, for these additional comments. Godwin, you can have the floor. I see you raise your hand.
Alors, merci et bonjour tout le monde. Je suis Godwin.
Thank you all. I'm Godwin. I'm working on training on human rights. I'm just briefly going to thank you all and salute this process, which is, according to me, very inclusive. I would briefly like to talk about the challenge of respect regarding relationships between different states. I've observed in the propositions and the recommendations that have been made by participants, I've noticed that we should adopt or alternatively adopt to this issue of delay. There is a need to simplify the reporting process, to simplify the state's responsibility. And I wonder if, even though I agree with these propositions, do they mean that we can really control the lack of engagement coming from states? So this time frame is exceptionally long, and to deliver reports by states. And isn't this more relating to the lack of commitment by states? Have we checked how we could encourage states to be more committed, show more will to make the situation of human rights evolve? That's my question, that's my worry. And also maybe we should see how in this process, how we can maybe improve this aspect of the process. Thank you very much. Thank you, Godwin. Samira, I give you the floor, if that's okay with you. And then we have a question from Benoit. Thank you so much, Godwin, for your question, for this very pertinent, relevant question for actually political commitment, I think. So unfortunately, no. These are technical propositions that can't encourage political will if we don't have it in the first place. I think these propositions linked to states that are willing to participate with treaty bodies, but who don't necessarily have the resources for this action. So regarding the fixed calendar, for example, some countries had to present reports in front of different treaty bodies in a very short time. And this is really a challenge for these states to be able to answer, to respond to this request and fulfill their obligations. So I think this obligation has been made in this direction in order to avoid, in the end, that because of the lack of human resources and of technical capacities, the states don't respond to their obligations. And we know that for some states, this is really the case. That's the issue. And also for a country like Switzerland, I'm going to be honest, it's really a big task to respond to these interactive dialogues, submit reports, etc. So I think it's really legitimate to simplify the procedure. But indeed, states who simply don't want to participate in the system, I mean, these measures are really not going to encourage them. Maybe they'll have less excuses. Maybe they'll have to find better justification if they don't respect their reporting obligations. And we really hope that through this, through the fact that reporting becomes simpler, that they will be more forced to respond to it. But if they really don't want to do it, that's not going to force them in some way. Thank you, Samira, for your comments. Indeed, a state who doesn't want to send its report, the only way that we have currently is the procedure of examination in the absence of report, but there is no way of encouraging this state. The only positive point that we can see on the fixed calendar is that there's going to be more visibility and preparation to see when states will need to send their reports, and when a state will be examined on this calendar. I think that will be more difficult for the state not to engage with the committee in question, because they will be able to planify, to organize their work years in advance. So in terms of preparation for states and NGOs, I think it's a proposition that is very positive. And for the Committee on Human Rights and the Committee on Cultural Rights, I think that's also in question, also on the time of cycles. Cycles are 8 years, so that means a lot of time goes by. So thank you so much for waiting. The floor is now yours. Hello, I am from Belgium on the Human Rights Defense. Thank you for this meeting. It's very important that we do this. I have 2 questions/comments and 1 real question. More 1 comment to start off. I see that in particular for decisions taken by treaty bodies on individual recourse and a number of situations, states often do not follow up individual decisions, in particular interim decision making, and this asks the question also of the organs of decision making. So maybe on a national level we should ask this question again, and for a personal follow-up, I think that's really a question. There's a lack of follow-up on these questions. Now a comment on the choice of candidates for the different committees. I think the question is very sensitive, but transparency that's defended, I think, is going the right way. However, it's not going to solve the issue that candidates are chosen in a very political context, and that the value of candidates, the profile and competences of these are not necessarily always the most important elements, and maybe they're not often enough put forward to choose candidates. And a question, I'm not sure if we've touched on the subject, maybe we have, and I apologize in advance, but regarding collaboration between treaty bodies and special mandates and other mechanisms, so special representatives, special mandates on different themes and geographical regions. I think that's very important for the coordination of these structures. That's absolutely fundamental to improve the overall system, I believe. Thank you. Thank you for your questions and comments. I think your comments are really justified, and I agree, particularly on the question of communication and implementation, which is indeed a big challenge. Samira, can you again answer these questions? Can you make a point on the coordination and regarding the comments of the candidates as well? Thank you, Patrick. Thank you for the questions, Benoit, and the comments. I agree with you. I've got the same opinion. Indeed, these are points that are difficult to answer, in particular regarding transparency with the election of candidates, and also because of the fact that actually the skills of candidates should be implemented, not just it's not just a political game. So as you said, the elections are taking place in a political framework. We can't hide this. It is the case. The states elect the candidates. However, I think this is why it's important also to have an interactive dialogue with participants, having information available on them, not on participants, but on the states, because on candidates, sorry, because this really brings forward discussions around subjects that are linked to the mandate of the body for which they are applying. And that's what I've observed during these last few interactive dialogues that I participated in with candidates. And also, this interactive dialogue with candidates for this committee against torture. I think this can have an impact. I think this can also guide states and state representatives to attempt and choose the most skilled candidates, because I don't think there is anything. There are, of course, political considerations that play a role, but I think skills need to be taken into account. I see that there's a lot of interest, a lot of background questions being asked to the candidates by the states. So I think that could be a step in the right direction. And I don't think that all political consideration wouldn't be taken into account in the future. Now, regarding the obligatory force of individual communications, I think that I can only share your worry and your doubts, because I think in the end, the more the system is perceived as being legitimate and efficient, the more difficult it gets to justify the non-collaboration with this system. So I think it's really the only force that we have, which is to reinforce the system, the force of the system, in order to make it really obligatory and to collaborate with it. But I share your doubts on that subject. I think collaboration, indeed, the focus during consultations has been mostly put by different actors which participated in the process. So the focus was really on collaboration between treaty bodies rather than with other actors. And in particular, special rapporteurs have been mentioned a few times, and we agree that there is still room for improvement, more coordination, more synergies to be created, and also improved dialogue. Because I think that's really the first step to then being able to planify, organize activities consequently, and also share tasks in a better way. But I don't know, Patrick, maybe you want to add something on this subject of collaboration? Indeed, for us, it's always a challenge to have a collaboration with special rapporteurs. And I think I agree that we are closed. I think it's difficult to have an overall overview of all actors and see if the communication is well done with all the different committees. I think it's a huge challenge. But then also we need to open up to other points. That's important. What you also mentioned regarding the transparency the procedures and election of candidate to the committee. My colleague Taisuke, who really follows the communications of says that actually the UK regularly does a transparency procedure of nomination of candidates, and that this recommendation was been made for Belgium, but Belgium didn't approve it. So I think also we can work here maybe on the communication here in order to make sure that there are some evolvement here, some improvements that are implemented for more transparency for candidates that should present in front of a panel. And maybe we can hope that the situation in the UK will now also be followed by other states. Belgium has not accepted the recommendation coming from the UK. So I hope we really need to do a lot more work on that level. Time is running past. I see there's no other questions. I think we should follow up.
To develop, to advocate for this, the implementation of the reports. We already touched upon, but I'm sure there is more to come from Ilaria, and as CSOs, we really have a key role to play. And thank you, Ilaria, for flagging this now. So the floor is yours. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Patrick, and thank you, Samira, again for participating today, sharing the information, but also for the collaboration all along the process. Yeah, the next steps, that's the big question. Let me say that, let me start by acknowledging the great level of uncertainty due to the global context in which we are, and that has an impact on really everything from the 2020 review follow-up, I assume, to the work of the treaty bodies in more general terms. But there are nevertheless certain things that we know will happen, certain other things that we know are already happening, and certain things that we should definitely discuss as civil society to decide, what to do next. If I have to start by sharing what we think or what we understand will happen for sure in relation to the 2020 review process follow-up, and also thanks again, Samira, for sharing today and highlighting that it's really up to the President of the General Assembly now to take a decision on how this follow-up process will be. But it seems to us that what's sure is that the president of the GA will set up another intergovernmental process as called by the co-facilitators report. What might happen is that this intergovernmental process might lead to a new resolution as recommended again by the co-facilitators report, and that the President of the General Assembly might nominate co-facilitators for this intergovernmental process. We don't know yet when, but supposedly next year. So in terms of what we are hearing that it's already happening, and that's not necessarily linked to the 2020 review, but it is in a way also, is that some states are taking some initiatives already to express and offer support, including financial support, to the treaty bodies through voluntary funding contributions to the OHCHR, particular for the work on digitalization, for the digitalization shift. to allow for improvements already, without waiting for the 2020 review process to shape into an intergovernmental process or a new resolution. It's clear that states are realizing that certain things cannot wait, and the need for the treaty bodies to work, to find ways to work online is imperative. It's very urgent. So that's something positive. As Geneva-based NGOs, we're starting to hear that this is getting, this is happening, and so this is something that everybody should be aware, because I think as NGOs we can really encourage, and we should encourage the states to do so, to commit more funding, to provide more funding and more support to the treaty bodies, as soon as possible, and through voluntary contributions. We also know that the budget for 2021, and we'll hear more after me from Anna Karin, but the budget for 2021 has been discussed and is going to be decided by the end of the year at the GA level, and that the general expectation is that no additional resources will be given to the treaty bodies, given the very tense global context. So that's something that's worrying us, and something that we should reflect on as civil society organizations. We also know that on the treaty bodies front, we know that many things are happening already, again, without waiting for another intergovernmental process. Things cannot wait also in terms of the treaties body's own work. And as we heard earlier, there are more and more actions taken by treaty bodies to operate online even farther than in 2021, much more than in 2020. So the perspective is positive on that front. But what I would say is that it's undoubtedly, it's unquestionable that the 2020 review has accelerated certain discussions and certain initiatives by the treaty bodies. So it has been really useful, to my point of view, for example, to encourage the chairpersons of the treaty bodies to take a position on the fixed calendar, as we heard from Patrick earlier. And also from Samira, the chairs will work on a plan to develop a fixed calendar approach together with OHCHR. And this was publicly announced at the last chairperson's meeting. And it's something that, as TBNet and Geneva-based NGOs working closely with the treaty bodies, we will monitor closely, and we will also make sure to input, to provide concrete suggestions to the chairpersons and the treaty body members on this. Something that we keep highlighting is that this should happen with a system-wide approach. And so this initiative by the chairs is welcome, because we hope that it can bring some coherence, a coherent approach to whatever way that this fixed calendar will be developed. Another aspect that is moving forward, particularly due to the COVID-19 situation, is the digitalization. As I was mentioning earlier, the first online reviews of states are being announced and confirmed by treaty bodies for next year as first pilot experience that can hopefully be successful and encourage more other treaty bodies to do the same. But also in terms of practicalities, the potential use of Zoom as a platform by treaty bodies is under discussion after a few trial of different platforms that weren't necessarily responding to the treaty body's needs. Something interesting that is happening right now is discussions around collaboration with OHCHR regional offices for the treaty bodies to potentially adapt the work time to different time zones and not be constrained by the Geneva time zone for online work, for fully online work. This is also something interesting that could really bring some changes also in the long term. If we think, for instance, of the idea of reviews in regions by the treaty bodies, and how then these different conditions need to be adapted along the way. I would also like to highlight that the more the treaty bodies are meeting online, the more lessons are drawing, obviously on the challenges, because indeed there are many, but also on the potential for improving the working methods in the long term. In particular, if I think of participation of civil society. So with the Committee on the Rights of the Child, we have just experienced the fully online pre-session, which consists of different meetings with the civil society, children, and UN agencies. And we have really drew some lessons on how different working methods that are not necessarily linked to online work, but this online context made us, even more attentive to how these meetings could be more interactive, and pushed us to make suggestions on how to improve the quality of the meeting itself, really beyond the online context. Because in any case, in the case of the CRC, even before COVID, these kind of meetings were hybrid by nature. So the online participation was already there as a component. And we really feel that now we are more equipped after this experience to improve, long-term participation of civil society, and continue to do so. While these are things that are really moving forward, as I said, without any state's intervention, if you like, there are other things that indeed require state's intervention in another GA resolution. And our understanding is that, for instance, the compensation issue raised by the treaty bodies themselves, with states directly, but also with the HE, and the issue of the SA also mentioned in the co-facilitators report. This is something that seems not to be how to say, a solvable issue by the system, but it really needs the intervention by the GA, and that's also explains why things are not moving forward in this respect. Now, thinking of what we as NGOs could do, I would just highlight, obviously I don't have an answer, but more like few reflections and few points to share, to rather open the discussion with you. From my perspective, we really have the duty to push jointly and strongly, in general terms, with the UN and states to push for more funding, and for states to overcome this financial crisis, that it's getting worse. As we heard earlier, the financial crisis is not a new thing. It's been there in the last few years, but indeed this year is getting much worse. And this is really impacting everything. you know, whether there is or not a pandemic, that's something that it's really worrying and has an impact on anything that relates to the treaty body's work. So we have taken some actions. Child Rights Connect has published a statement, raised awareness, but I think this should come really from all sides, and really we should remind states to commit and respect their commitments to the UN. I think we should also continue to encourage and really advocate for the system to function in the context of the pandemic. The work shouldn't stop. Otherwise, there is a high risk that the system will lose its relevance, and states might take advantage of the situation to undermine even more the system. But on the other hand, you know that we have come up with this joint civil society letter addressed to treaty bodies and OHCHR, calling for online reviews to happen and conditions to be put in place for this to happen. But on the other hand, we really also have to show to the treaty bodies that we are cooperative as civil society, that we are you know, that we are ready to engage and suggest and contribute to suggesting concrete solutions. And I think this is something that it's really important and needed. In relation to the 2020 review specifically, something that maybe Anna Kari wants to mention more in detail later, but just to say that we are working, that Amnesty is coordinating a joint NGO position or commentary on the co-facilitators outcome report, where we as a civil society will you know, welcome and note the recommendations of the co-facilitators and add our own comments and recommendations to it. This is something that we hope it can continue to maintain the momentum. It can be used at the different levels, including national level, to engage in the states on a discussion and a dialogue to maintain the momentum on the 2020 review. And then the last point, it's more a question, if Samira is still with us, perhaps, or anyone else has any other views, but I wonder if there is a room or a role that civil society can play directly with the President of the General Assembly, you know, in relation to the intergovernmental process, the future follow-up one, you know, is there something that we want to say about that? We want to try to reach out to the President of the GA. I don't know, is an open question. I would really like to welcome comments and reactions to that. Thank you very much. And yeah, I think we can open the discussion.
Thank you very much, Ilaria, for those points you made, and the fact that actually some progress being actually currently made in the context of the COVID in one side, sorry, but also in the context of the role of the chairs that can actually take the role of improving some of the working methods in line with the recommendation. So it's not only an intergovernmental process, and we should not only rely on the General Assembly and the next steps from the states, but we can also, I think we did as TVNet, also push for increasing the role of the chairs or themselves, or the members themselves, to move forward. And I think as a society, we really need to work closely with the committees, with the members, to make sure that the process is ongoing, and not only at the government process. I don't know if there are some questions from the colleagues. You can also use the chat. The time is is flying quite quickly now. We still have 20 minutes to go. If I don't see any questions, feel free again to use the chat. I can give the floor to Anna-Karin, that she will also brief us on the budgetary implications of the process, and also tell more on what could be the next steps regarding the process itself at the General Assembly level. All the issues are very much connected, so it's not easy to to separate the different panel and the different presentations. And it's really grateful to Anna-Karin to give us her views on this process. So thank you, Anna-Karin, and the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Patrick. And I just also wanted to add my thanks to TBNet for organizing this meeting, and of course ISHR and OSJI as well as partner in this. And then also thanks to Samira for joining us today, and everyone else who's online. I'll try to take you through a little bit of the background on the kind of budgetary implications for the treaty bodies, and also some of the challenges that remain going forward. It's an extremely technical area, and a lot of us that work with this on a day-to-day basis are really struggling to get our heads around it. So if I'm too technical, don't be afraid to raise your hand, and I hope that I can clarify. I can't promise it, but so just I think most of us know who work in human rights that the UN actually only allocates a fraction of its total budget to human rights. So OHHR only receives 3.7% of the UN regular budget, and around 2/3 of its activities are covered by extra budgetary and voluntary extra budgetary resources and voluntary contributions. When Resolution 68268 was adopted in 2014, it contained a major development, and it has a formula that actually calculates the resources that the treaty bodies should be allocated from the regular budget of the UN. And it asked the Secretary General to calculate what the required meeting time will be for the treaty bodies, and of course the kind of associated staff support that they will need to be able to do the work during these meetings. It also includes visits by the SPT, reviews, individual communications, and then it has some additional kind of wrap-up time for additional issues. Which in the role that the Secretary General assigns to them, they translate the meeting time into requirements and specific requests for staffing. There are certain areas in this formula that are not funded, and some are not adequately funded. So for example, the urgent actions of the Committee on Enforced Disappearances, some of the early warning functions of the CERD, general comments and recommendations are not funded through the formula. And this is of course also an area that's contested by some states that say that the treaty body shouldn't be doing this at all, which of course we disagree with strongly. Interstate complaints are also not adequately funded in this formula. And some of the discussions really have been since 2014 about partly how this formula should be implemented, but also if and how it could be updated to fully fund all of the functions of the treaty bodies. Since 2017, the UN Secretary General has been relying on this formula to request resources for the treaty bodies and to request additional resources. In 2017, they asked for the budget of 2018 and 2019, they asked for an additional 10 positions, and they only got 5. When the Secretary General proposes the draft budget and the budget pitch that he puts forward, it has to go through a budgetary committee, which is set up by experts who serve in their independent capacity. And they're basically made up, it's a committee of accountants that look at it only from the point of view of numbers. And this committee, it's called the ACABQ, they have actually rejected the formula itself. They're not happy with the fact that there's a formula that would automatically trigger an increase in resources. Those 5 additional resources that they got for the budget in 2018 have since then been, it's been a major struggle to try to keep those. At the most, they have managed to keep them and managed not to lose them. The Secretary General has also been fairly modest in his tasks, taking into account some of the real politics and lack of political will to actually give increased resources to the treaty bodies. Then the issue is that it's very difficult to actually get more resources approved through the 5th Committee of the General Assembly if the Secretary General isn't asking for them. So it's been a little bit of a moment or a catch-22 there. And NGOs have been working with states and with the Secretary General, or try to lobby them to actually make sure that they request the resources that the treaty bodies actually need to do their work. And then in addition to this challenge, in 2018, just before the Christmas break, the General Assembly also applied an across-the-board 25% cut on travel of representatives. And due to the size of the treaty body membership, it's 172 experts, and the amount of time that they travel to meetings and sit in meetings, this travel cut has disproportionately affected the treaty bodies, and several sessions were threatened with cancellation in 2019 because the major expenditure of the treaty bodies is meeting time and travel to meetings. In through the approval of the 68268 resolution, the treaty body funding also moved over to regular budget. And in UN terms, this actually it's actually something good. It means that you can foresee the funds that are coming in. You're able to plan the operations more, and if you're funded by the regular budget, you're actually less dependent on extra budgetary funding that can vary greatly from year to year. But since then, the UN has gone to one of its worst liquidity crises in the last 20 years. And in addition to that, the COVID-19 pandemic has turned all of it on its head. And the regular funding that had actually been allocated to the treaty bodies cannot be given to them because the UN has no cash available. So OHHR in its operation has had to work a lot on just a monthly basis of trying to cover salaries and to go forward with a drip approach to their operations. This doesn't only affect the treaty bodies, it also affects the other parts of the operations of OHHR, of course, and the special procedures, as well as the Human Rights Council and independent mechanisms that the Council sets up. One of the reasons also for this liquidity crisis is that more and more states pay their assessed contributions late, and some don't pay at all. There are some huge amounts actually due by the United States and Brazil, the US owing more than $1 billion. In the lead up actually to the next budget going forward, the Secretary General has made a more realistic pitch for resources. When we think also a bit more principled, looking at what, not so much on the real politics, but actually what the treaty bodies need. But then again, they've had to try to fight to really, keep these 5 posts they got in 2018. And this budgetary committee again came in and said that they can keep those, they won't get any more. They again objected to the formula as automatically triggering resources. And they also recommended a vacancy freeze on half of these posts. So it means that they won't be able to use all of these positions either. Another budgetary challenge, which Ilaria already touched upon, is the challenge on treaty body members, how they can be compensated when they carry out their functions remotely. In principle, this shouldn't cost more money than spending time in Geneva, because it's one of the most expensive locations they could actually work in. But it's very complicated in terms of the UN administrative rules on how that can actually be applied in practice. In the co-facilitators report as well, there is a recommendation by the co-facilitators, and also a lot of the stakeholders involved had expressed support for the predictable calendars. And the co-facilitators recommended that OHCHR would now do a costing exercise to calculate how much these calendars would cost. And actually, if we were to persuade member states that they should fully honor the formula, in 68.268, the treaty bodies would come out in a much better position than they are now. And if the formula can also be amended or updated to ensure that it actually covers all the functions, then the treaty bodies would be on fairly stable ground. But the main challenge continues to be the implementation of this formula as well, and the fact that even though the framework is there, the political will has not been there. So going forward, it's of course extremely important that we continue working with friendly states, the G77 states that have been quite supportive of actually not only supporting the work of the treaty bodies from a human rights angle, but also supporting them with the resources they need to be able to do their work. And well, so I think that I might stop there and see if anyone has any questions, but going forward, there are still many question marks and many challenges ahead, and especially to get states to put their money where the word is. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anna-Karin, and it is also a very probably the most technical issue you addressed. So it was very clear, and we really appreciate. And as you said, I think the money is really the key issue. It's one thing to have a nice report with very good recommendations if there is no willingness to ensure the adequate budget is there. This report may just remain a piece of paper. So I think one of the main challenge, and you clearly explain that, remain the commitment of the states to provide a budget for this new process, and especially if we want to have this calendar with increasing the number of reviews per year. I see two questions. One more, I think, related with what with the presentation from Ilaria on the connectivity or the relations between the treaty bodies themselves, and how treaty bodies can actually be more engaged. And I see that Ilaria already responded to the chat. If the other colleagues would like also to share examples of good practice amongst the treaty bodies and the way they cooperate, feel free to use the chat or just raise your hand. And there is one question from Silke regarding the state taking initiative with regard to the treaty body fundings. She would like to know which are the states that are taking such initiative to increase their participation to the treaty bodies fundings. Ilaria, you want to respond if you have any general thoughts?
Yeah, we don't know which states are specifically, but we know that it's probably those who have, spoken in favor of the online work during the 2020 review discussions. So more like EU states, from what we know, but we don't know exactly, who has actually come with money already. It's still a bit of a rumor, Geneva rumor at the moment.
And if I can add to that, I think also there is in relation to that rumor, it also, I think, it directly links to this proposal to develop a case management system for the petitions unit. And So the suspects there are the states that have been very supportive of that idea and very critical about how it's been working until now. So yeah, so it's and actually some of the talk is that they're hoping that some funds could be gathered for that initiative in the interim, not having to wait for this process to conclude before they could start working on a case management system.
Thanks, Anna-Karin and Ilaria, for the clarification. The time is really going fast. We have still 3 minutes to go. I just would like to give a brief overview of the current situation of the way the treaty bodies may operate in this context of the COVID-19. To say that the situation remains extremely difficult in terms of the reviews, and some of us just explained earlier that there was almost no review, at least no reviews between March and now from the different tribunals, except one, the Committee on Forced Disappearances, who actually reviewed Iraq a few weeks ago, and it seems that I mean, those who followed that, and I try to do as well, were quite positive on the way the process of these online reviews took place. So it's quite encouraging for the future. But at this stage, and again, that was also said before, there is no clear visibility on how the treaty bodies will proceed for next year. There are some commitment of some of the treaty bodies that are ready to move to the online reviews for 2021. And it's clear that for TBNet and the colleagues here in Geneva, we push for these online reviews at least as long as there is this pandemic. So it should be clear that the online reviews should not replace physical reviews in the future, and that's a risk. But as long as we could not travel and there is no possibility to meet physically in Geneva, we strongly believe that there is a need to develop another modus operandi to make sure that the treaty bodies can actually carry out their mandate of country reviews and organize themselves as soon as possible to make these reviews possible for 2021. And in this context, we had, I mean, we prepare as with colleagues of TBNet and other colleagues organizing this webinar, we prepared a letter urging the treaty bodies and the members to develop some guidelines and be ready to organize the online reviews for 2021. This letter was signed by 523 NGOs with a huge impact on in terms of support from national NGOs. And I think it was probably also very useful in the sense of it was not only sent to the treaty bodies themselves, but also to the secretariat of the treaty bodies and the OHCHR. And we heard that the OHCHR actually used this letter for to make sure that all the treaty bodies, all the members are actually agreed and support the idea of online review. There are still resistance. It is clear that there are some issues. One is the DSA, so the per diem of the members, and I mean, it's clear that for the treaty bodies, the members coming to Geneva, the fact that they should work online without any per diem, without any fundings or support regarding their participation on the online reviews is an issue. So there are some discussions to at least allocate part of the per diem or part of the DSA to the members, around 20%, but there is some legal issues, discussions among the treaty bodies themselves, the OHCHR and the UN. The UN in New York in terms of the feasibility of this possibility. I think that's one of the issues why there is still no more clear engagement and commitment from the treaty bodies. What is really important for us is to have more visibility and clarity in the online reviews. What we would like to make sure is that the calendar for those online reviews will be decided as soon as possible for all treaty bodies, and there are some alignment in in the way the treaty bodies will work on this process, including for the NGO engagement. So it's extremely also important that all the NGO engagement that we usually have in Geneva, such as the NGO briefings, participation during the session, and just being able to access those reviews, should be kept in this online reviews. So that we will, and we actually already started with some of the colleagues from TBNet to organize online meetings between the NGOs and from a country and the reviewed and the committee members. I think that should be further developed, and I think as TBNet we will make sure that all the standards that we have actually in Geneva when we meet physically should be kept on the online reviews, and that's you can be reassured that we will make this argument very strong in the discussions for these online reviews. It's very brief, but I think we have no much more time. Do we have any more questions? I think one question from Eloise: are the delays expected for examination which already been confirmed? That's the problem. So far, the delays on all the countries postponed from 2020 to 2021 are not exactly confirmed. There are more and more pending reviews for next year. I think it's important to understand that due to the time zones, the committee, if they meet online, will not be able to review the same numbers of countries per session. So in any case, there will be less countries reviewed per session, and there are really fears that the number of pending reports will be increased next year. So there is no visibility, and I think that's why we actually wrote this letter. We would like to know exactly which country will be reviewed and for which session, to make sure we can alert all the NGOs from the national level on the modalities of their implication and also on the deadlines. So I think that's really a key issue. Maybe also to flag, and I should have maybe said that in the beginning of this briefing note, it's important to note that the treaty bodies actually work. So we should also not give the wrong impression that the treaty bodies, at least some of them, are not working at all. They actually work. They meet. They are involved in the other part of their mandates, such as the adoption of a list of issues prior to reportings, and I think they did it quite well despite the difficulties. And also regarding the issue of the mandate of the individual communications, where most of the treaty bodies actually continue to work on discussed cases submitted to them and adopted some of the views. So they are still functioning, but of course one of the main parts, which is the country reviews, is now on hold, and I think it's where we urge the treaty bodies to restart these proceedings. With this, I don't know if there are more questions or if my colleagues would like to add something regarding their own treaty bodies, or if you have some specificities to add on the process.
Maybe, Patrick, if I can just say that it seems that there is an intention or an agreement from OHCHR to basically define or take formal decisions on every treaty body session at least 2 months prior to the session itself. And this, I think, it's some sort of answer to the strong point that we made through our letter on predictability and lack of information. So from the CRC side, we are seeing this being applied currently, you know, this 2 months time frame. So we hope or we expect actually a formal decision on the January session to be made by mid-November, which is really positive, and I hope that can be really you know, across the treaty approach, because so far it has been it's been a bit random.
Thank you. You're right, Ilaria. Thank you for flagging this. This 2 months rules now is seems to be well accepted by every committees. Let's see how it will be implemented. Tai, you would like to add something?
Yes, just quickly. Sorry if I missed it, but one of the things, one of the important things for civil society to push for online reviews at the national level is to encourage your countries to opt for it. I was told by one of the diplomats here is that at least from his perspective, like they don't want to give an impression that the opting for online reviews, they are trying to avoid the full scrutiny of the proper reviews. So it's also important for them to hear civil society is also keen to do online reviews so that they don't feel like they are doing some shady actions. But anyway, that was his opinion. But anyway, it's important for civil society to also show that we are willing to have online reviews.
Thanks, Tai, for flagging this. I think you're right. It's really important that we push as CSOs to move forward on those online reviews. Any question before we conclude? If I don't see any question, just a reminder that this webinar and the one from yesterday, at least partially, but the one today, I think it's fully recorded in French and in English. So you can, we will post it online, probably on Facebook page of TBNet. Thank you so much for your participation. I think it was great. It was really nice to have you all on board. We will be in touch by email, so we have all your contacts to update you on the next steps. Thank you to Samira. She left, but it was really nice to have the Swiss mission with us. Thank you also to the panelists. It was really nice to have you on board, my colleague of TBNet and Amnesty. And thank you very much for the interpreters. It was really great to count on you and to be able to translate this in the sign languages and as well in French. I heard from a private channel that it went very well. So the colleagues speaking French are also very happy. So thanks a lot for all your efforts. It's really good. Thank you so much to everyone, and we will keep in touch. Feel free to contact us online if you have any questions on the process. And wish you a very nice end of the day for those in Asia or in the East. Sorry, in the West, and good afternoon for those in Europe and in Africa. Bye bye to everyone.